Yo, it's Noah. It's been a while. Yeah, I haven't done a video in a minute. I got some red wine, little fireside chat. Very improper, but hey. I think the last video I made was a best books of 2025 list, and starting off 2026, there's a crazy snowstorm outside. I wish I could turn the camera around and show you, but that's a lot of work. And I'd have to edit. So I'm not going to do that. I'm a little bit sleepy. I'm about to get off here and play some Skyrim. But I just wanted to update y'all with what I've been reading recently. It's a little bit of a mix of everything. I might have said this in a previous video, but this year, last year and the year before, 2025 and 2024, I kind of felt that booktube pressure to just like read and not really digest things, and I don't like that. So this year, my plan is to be more intentional, take my time, and see where that gets me. That's my goal. Instead of just trying to meet a goal, and I don't necessarily set goals, but a few years prior, I did catch myself sitting there like, oh, if I don't read this, if I want to read this long book, it's going to take a long time. So why don't I read the short book so I can add it to my list? You know what I mean? Hold on. So this year is more about intentionality. And there's a cat at my door. Don't worry, it's not a ghost. Yeah, so I'm just gonna kick it off, and I'm also gonna challenge myself to read more different stuff. I'm also downsizing my bookshelf. There's a bookshelf behind me, but it's really empty. So I actually, fun fact about me, or not fun, wow, my hairline is terrible. I used to read a little bit of anime or manga. I used to read a little bit of manga, and I think it was late 2025, I got into Helsing. I always forget that I always forget there's a terrible glare half the time. I got into Helsing. This is volume one. Just your average vampire, sci-fi horror kind of story. Just overall, it's a lot of fun. Hold on, I'm about to mess with the lighting mid-video. A lot of fun. Trying to think of how it starts. It's been a minute. So yeah, the main character is this dude named Alucard, which is Dracula backwards, and he's an employee of the Helsing organization, and he's a vampire hunter for some sort of Protestant group, and which I've known about Helsing for a while, but I've never realized that. Another thing I didn't realize that makes total sense is a vampire can't kill all of his cattle because then he doesn't have anything to feed on. So in the book or in the series, I haven't seen or watched any like the whole thing in its entirety, but there's like two groups so far. There's like the Helsing organization, which I think is Protestant, and then there's like Section 13 Iscariot, which I think is just the Roman Catholic side, but I might be getting my terms mixed up. I don't remember much church lingo. It's been a long time. But as a person who's always been into like art and comic books type stuff, there's a lot of really cool art in this. I own volumes 1, 2, and 3, and 6. It's kind of hard. It's kind of spotty around my area in terms of finding the volumes. So sometimes you'll find 1, 2, and 3 in a store, and then you'll randomly find volume 7 a month later, and you have to either watch the show to supplement what you're missing, or you just don't you're just reading it in bits and pieces. I have volume 6 and I haven't even read it. I've had it for like a month. I've watched like episodes 1 through 4 on Hellsing Ultimate. If you're into manga, I think The Glare is less bad now. Yeah, it's not. That's still bad. That's terrible. I can literally see myself. That's crazy. I need to like get it with an angle. Hold on. That's just as bad, probably. Yeah, but if you're into manga, it's a good read. You know, there's a little bit of typical anime weirdness, like the vampires go after virgins a lot. I don't know if that's vampiric stuff, like vampiric lore, but they do that. Another book I have to read for class that I don't know much about, but everybody knows who this is by, and that is King Richard II by Shakespeare. And this is, I read a lot of the Folgers editions of Shakespeare, and I thought those were academic. I mean, they are in a way, but this is like the academic final boss of Shakespeare. Like, I don't know if this is going to translate well, but like every page, this is not going to focus, but my thing just fell out. But like every page is just like there's so little play on every page and nothing but footnotes, which the footnotes, yes, they help, but like this book is unnecessarily fat because of all the footnotes. The footnotes really help. I'm taking a Shakespeare class this year, and I really love my teacher. He's super cool. His name's actually, I shouldn't say that because you'll probably be able to find out where I live and where I go to school. But cool guy. Figured out he was gay, which is not a problem. But we figured it out because there's a part in King Richard II that not explicitly implies homosexual sex, and he started going off about it, and then he was just like, as a gay man, and 2 people in my class kind of lit up like, oh shit. It's a long story, but the 2 girls that I'm talking about, they were like, how'd you come to that conclusion? Like, what do you mean it means that? And he had to go on this long professor tangent about why that means what it means. Something about foul wrongs, you know what I mean? Yeah, but overall, I'm enjoying King Richard II, or King Richard II. Wow. King Richard is an interesting character, in my opinion. I'm having a little bit of problems with the language, which is just me. I have to read Shakespeare really slow. And even with that going on, I feel like I don't get it half the time. I have to kind of like footnote it and read a summary before and after, you know. I'm not the best. Like, I like Shakespeare, and I know I do, and he's like a good writer, and he's funny. But sometimes I'm like, it takes me a little bit for it to sink in. But he does a good job. Oh, I don't know. He's kind of complex in my mind because he's not a good king. He's young. He's being manipulated. People are pulling the strings for him. But he also has his moments where he puts on a really good body politic kind of vibe. But then he has moments where that completely just goes away. And in fact, there's parts where he'll tell people like, hey, I need you to do this. Why don't you make this decision? Why don't you make that decision? And then he just like goes off and does other things. And I'm sitting there like, dude, like, you are the king in a monarchy. Like, you have that power. And he's like forgetting that he is the king. But then in other instances, he's just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna punish this guy just because I can. I'm just gonna do this for the people because I can. I'm just gonna, oh wait, how about instead of fighting, I'm gonna banish both of you. Like, I feel like he's putting on this act like he's a good king, and it makes me wonder. I'll never know this, obviously, because he's a character in the play, but I wonder what his expectations of a king are versus what he's doing, because I feel like he's kind of complex. Like he's a good, if you're talking body politic, he's good at moments of like putting on the king act and having absolute power, God anointed. But then some scenes he's just like, he just acts like a kid, and you're just like, dude, what the hell are you doing? You got Bolingbroke and Mowbray, or Thomas Mowbray, and right now I think right now I'm in Act 3, Scene 2, I believe, and I read a little bit of it. Don't really know what's going on. I'll probably have to reread it for class. It's like an intro to Shakespeare undergrad class. It's fun. Next we're reading As You Like It, so I got to go buy a copy of that. The next book I read that I really enjoyed, and I'm going to ramble a little bit. My preamble to this book is, this was a book where I knew the author. He, I think, studied under, or he was taught by Wallace Stegner at Stanford under the Wallace Stegner Fellowship, I think. I walked into Barnes & Noble with some money to spend, got paid. I have fun money, a little bit of fun money sometimes. And I was just browsing, and I think, honestly, I was getting really close to buying a new edition of the Canterbury Tales, right? Because my other copy is like beat the fuck up. Like, I'm talking like, looks like it's been ran over. It's actually like a cool, I consider it nice. But I was like, oh, I should probably get like the new, the more contemporary, more new Penguin Classics edition. Just a cleaner look. It has a front cover. My current Canterbury Tales is missing the front cover. And I also I thought about buying a book about Japanese yokai. And I was like, got it down to those two. I was like, I'm going to probably pick one. I think there was like a Penguin Book of Demons or something I thought about checking out. I'm kind of into like demon stuff, sort of. It's probably a self-report. But I was just browsing the fiction section, like, let me do one last go through. And I saw Ernest J. Gaines, which I've never read a book from him before the book I'm about to mention. And I don't really know I think it was like an intuition moment where you can't really explain why you picked up what you picked up. The cover did look cool, but if you were to ask me, like, why did you pick that over the other ones, I don't really know. I picked it up and it was like $15, and I was just like, yeah, I've heard this guy studied under Wallace Stegner. I'm a big Wallace Stegner fan. But the book is A Gathering of Old Men by Ernest J. Gaines. And this is a book about race relations in the South after a Cajun farmer is killed and nobody really knows who does it. That's not a spoiler, because people know, but nobody really knows who does it. It's interesting. Trying to think of how it sets up. I made a lot of annotations in this book. A really surprising read, and by surprising, I don't mean that I went into it just like, oh, I mean, obviously I bought it, so I figured it would be good. But yeah, so the main protagonist is this lady named Candy, and she's a white lady. She's a white woman, but her parents died in a car accident when I think she was like 5 or 6, I believe. And so she was raised by 2 African American people that live and reside on what used to be a plantation that their families used to, work on, if you know what I mean. And there's a white man that gets killed out on this homestead, and then when the authorities show up, what happens is this is not a spoiler, but what happens is every African American within like a few let me rewind, but a white man gets killed out on this homestead, and then word gets around, and then all the African American people that live around this homestead show up, and they all know each other, their family, their cousins. They got They got kids going to the LSU. They got kids going here and there. But they all show up. All the African American people living close, they all show up to this homestead. And then when the authorities show up, every African American on the homestead claims that they're the ones who killed the white man, the Cajun farmer. And just a lot of interrogation ensues. Nobody really knows who it is. This novel does a lot of good, okay, you're reading it and you think you know who it is. Okay, that makes sense. Wait, maybe it's her, maybe it's them, maybe it's him. Candy, one of the characters, Matthew, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, I'm sorry. He insists that he did it, and so do a bunch of other people. But because Candy is essentially Matthew's daughter, she defends Matthew, and she says she did it. She's like, white lady, I killed Bo. I killed the Cajun farmer. You're not touching my father or you're not touching Matthew. You're not touching any of the other folk. Like, it was me. Take me in. It's just a novel about race relations. And, you get a lot of racism from white people in the book. That's probably something that I don't want to say trigger warning. If you know what you're getting into, you know what you're getting into. I actually would highly recommend this book. Out of the books I've read, or in the books in this group, this is probably the one I'd recommend the most. You could probably get it used on thrift books for like $6 or $7. It was $15 new. Ernest J. Gaines, Gathering of Old Men. Fairly relatively short book, 203 pages, I think. I really enjoyed this book. I want to check out more books by him, and this goes back to another reading goal plan that I have in 2026 is to maybe stick to an author longer. I'm really bad about reading one book by an author and then never touching them again, probably for the rest of my life. I've read like one Steinbeck book, one Cormac McCarthy book, one blah blah blah, but what I want to do now is when I pick up an Ernest J. Gaines book, I want to read, like 2 or 3 before I move on to another author. And obviously I have tastes, and there's going to be things I see and pick up on whims, and that stuff's fine, but I want to make sure I give an author a good showcase before I'm just like, yeah, this is the one book I read, I'll never touch them again. Hopefully that made sense. Some poetry. I'm a big poet guy. I actually write poetry. I know you didn't ask, but I do. Some poetry. For a while I was reading Elizabeth Bishop's Geography 3. I mean, I read that book probably for a good 6 months. I would just sit on one poem for a month and read it every few days. But I finally gave that up. Very good. Highly recommend. But the next book of poetry I'm reading and kind of hopping around in is Hayden Carruth's Scrambled Eggs and Whiskey. Poems from 1991 and 1995. I actually do not know much about Hayden Carruth. I heard of Hayden Carruth through an essay collection by what's his name? Wendell Berry. Whatever the book is that has the raspberries on the front by Wendell Berry, there was an essay about how Hayden Carruth is a really good poet, and I decided to go to my used bookstore, and this was there, because I don't know if he's obscure, I don't know if he's popular. It didn't seem like he was a popular poet, so I just saw this book. Excuse me. That's embarrassing. I saw this book there, decided to pick it up, and the poem I'm kind of spotlighting right now is called 5:30 a.m., and I'm going to read it real quick. Cringy, right? Out of the eastern window at 5:30 in the morning. I messed that up. Start over. Out the eastern window at 5:30 this morning are the pear tree, the sycamore, and the high hill, the crest of it, with a new moon just risen above it. A crescent tipped beyond the dark trees, so clear and golden, a jewel. Yes, one might say a jewel. and already behind it the first dawn light spreading faint and soft and gray, like a mass of minute dead angels' wings coming closer, closer. The crescent is less bright. Soon it will be invisible. Oh, there is only an instant of vouchsafing. What can one do but write this little poem, finish the wine, take the sleeping pills, and go to bed? Sick. Reminds me of when I lived out in the country and I would just like get up real early. I used to wake up at like 3 in the morning and I just watch the sunrise, and there's that transition of colors. And if you know, you know. So moving on, I recommend this so far. The next book I'm reading, this is a reread. This is like, I'm going to probably try to do more rereads too, because a lot of the books on my shelves behind me, awkward. I've only read one time, kind of going back to the whole like not spending a lot of time on one author, you know. But this is this is probably one of my big rereads of the year. And that is Don Quixote. Pretty thick book. I think this edition's like 1,000 pages, but I think there's only about 800 or so of the novel, given it's a Penguin Classics with an introduction. It's translated, so there's like a translator's note. There's notes in the back, footnotes and things. I don't really remember a ton about Don Quixote. I read it, I think, in 2022, and I'm so much more of a mature reader these days than I was back then. A lot has changed since then. I'm probably like half a different person since I read this book, and I'm already 40 pages into it. And I do remember this is a really funny book. I feel like it had a short phase of being like a YouTube darling, Don Quixote, but I feel like no one really talks about it. But I feel like at one point it was kind of one of those like YouTube darling books. But if you like humor, like read this book. This book is really funny. It's just kind of like slapstick and stupid sometimes, which is surprising because I think this was written in 1609, or the first part was. And like I'm reading it, and maybe it's the translation, but I'm reading it, and I feel like if you told me this came out in 1909, I'd believe you. I'd be like, oh, this sounds really modern. Cheers. Wine before bed, probably very healthy, but I feel like a priest. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say. Thick book. Oh, speaking of good, this book has one of the best flops. Like, I love a good flop. I don't remember. I think it's War and Peace or some other Penguin Classics. They're so tightly bound, you have to read them like this. It's like, yeah, that's how you have to read it. Or you can just be one of those people, which I do this, where you just kind of like sit there and boom. Like, look at that crap. I just creased the hell out of that. But hey, look, I'm destroying my books, everybody. Look, are you mad? But yeah, look, now I got the creases on there. You mad? But no. I really recommend this book. Quite funny. Very modern. I think it actually gets claimed as like one of the first modern novels, but don't quote me on that. I am not a literature professor. That's funny. I might have straight up just like dented this because I think it used to be pretty straight, and literally me just doing that has made it to where it's like concave or convex, whatever word, where there's like now it's like a V shape. That's funny. Yeah, but that's about it. Sorry for the awkward silence. I was looking at the book. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'm talking a little bit low right now because my girlfriend is trying to sleep. Hopefully this checks out. Hopefully the audio's fine. If not, sorry, just try to turn up your volume more. But yeah, thanks for watching.